So, good morning, everyone. My name is Arafat. I teach history on the textbook platform. So, in this session, let us discuss a very important topic of modern Indian history, the Indian Home Rule Movement. The Indian Home Rule Movement. Let us understand various aspects of this topic, that is, the Indian Home Rule Movement. So, basically, home rule or self rule or dominion status is almost one and the same. Let us understand the meanings of home rule and self rule and dominion status. Dominion status. So the meanings of these three terms is one and the same. So basically, home rule or dominion status refers is dominion status is basically semi-independence. Semi-independent. So the point is, like India, uh, India was a British colony, but British also had uh, colonies, the other colonies in different parts of the world. Like say Canada was a British colony. Similarly, say uh, the Australia was also a British colony. So the point is, by beginning of 20th century itself, by the beginning of 20th century itself, countries like Canada or British colonies like Canada and Australia uh, had already got dominion status. Had already got dominion status. So what do you mean by dominion status? So dominion status or home rule or self rule means one and the same. Self rule all means one and the same. At the point. So I told you dominion status means semi-independent. So basically, those countries which got dominion status from the British enjoyed uh, a degree of autonomy. Particularly, they enjoyed degree of autonomy in internal matters. Internal matters. So basically, those countries which got dominion status enjoyed considerable autonomy in the internal matters, whereas external matters were still reserved to the British. The example of external matters being, say, defense, say, foreign affairs. These are examples of external matters. So the British still were in charge of defense and the foreign relations, but internal matters were left to be governed by the locals. So basically, countries which got dominion status were given uh, freedom to govern their own. The point is that the countries which got dominion status were given the permission by the British uh, uh, to to govern almost all the internal matters, whereas the external matters such as defense and foreign relations were still reserved to the British. Simple terms, um, dominion status means allowing the natives to rule over themselves, but by keeping their country as a part of the British Empire. The country will still remain as a part of the British Empire, but the locals, but the natives will be allowed to govern over themselves. Is what we call as a dominion status or self-rule, home rule, one and this. So basically, this home rule movement was a very important political movement of the early 20th century AD. This home rule or Indian home rule movement was a very significant uh, political event of the early 20th century AD. The Indian Home Rule movement was started by two nationalists, namely Bala Gangadhar Tilak and Anne Besant. And this movement was started with the objective of achieving self-rule or self-governance for India, but within the British Empire. I already explained to you what we mean by self-rule, self-governance, dominion status, all mean one and the same. This movement was started with the objective of achieving self-rule for India, but within the British Empire. So India would still remain as a part of the British Empire, but all the internal matters shall be allowed to be governed by the natives. Is what meant by self-rule or home rule. So it was with the objective of achieving self-rule that the home rule movement began in 1916 and 19. So basically, the home rule movement began in 1916. It was carried till 19. So let us, uh, before we discuss uh, the details relating to the home rule movement, let us discuss a thing or two relating to the individuals who started this movement. I told you this movement was started by two individuals, two nationalists. One is Bala Gangadhar Tilak and Annie Besant. Let us spend some time discussing about both of these individuals. Annie Besant is basically an Irish lady. She is in fact Irish by birth. So she was deeply influenced by the work of the Theosophical Society. Theosophical Society was an organization which was involved in promoting brotherhood among people. So Theosophical Society was an organization uh, which was established with the objective of undertaking comparative study of different religions. Let me repeat this point once again. Theosophical Society was founded 1875, was founded New York, was founded in New York, was founded by two individuals. One is Colonel Olcott. Second is a lady by name Blavatsky. Let me repeat. The Theosophical Society was founded in 1875 at New York. Was founded by two individuals. One is the Colonel Olcott, and second is a lady by name Blavatsky. So both of these individuals started this organization with a couple of objectives. One is to promote brotherhood among the people. Brotherhood. Second objective being to undertake a study, a comparative study of different religions of the world. Basically, to undertake a comparative study of different religions, philosophies, that Theosophical Society was founded. It was the core objective of Theosophical Society. So the point is, initially, the headquarters of Theosophical Society was located in New York, but later it was shifted to Adyar, which is close to that of Chennai. 1875, Theosophical Society was founded. Initially, headquarters was located in New York, but later it was shifted to Adyar, which is close to that of Chennai. So basically, Annie Besant was deeply influenced with the work carried out by the Theosophical Society, and therefore in 1893, Annie Besant came all the way to India, joined the Theosophical Society, became a member of the Theosophical Society. She came to India and became the member of Theosophical. So till 1907, uh, Colonel Olcott remained the president of the Theosophical Society, but following his death, Anne Besant became the next president of the Theosophical Society. So till the time of the death of Olcott, Alcott remained the president of Theosophical Society, but uh, following his death in 1907 AD, Anne Besant took over the leadership of the Theosophical Society. But in 1914, she returned back to her native country. It is in 1914, Anne Besant went to Ireland and was deeply impressed with the home rule movement that was being carried out in Ireland. So basically, like India, Ireland was also a British colony. Like India, Ireland was also a British colony, and the people of Ireland in 1914 uh, were carrying out a home rule movement, the same objective of achieving dominion status. So basically, the people of Ireland were just a minute. Am I audible now? Audible now? Hope I am audible now. The point is, I was. The point is, in 1914, Anne Besant returned back to Ireland. He was deeply impressed with the home rule movement that was being carried out in Ireland. So she was deeply impressed with the home rule movement that was being carried out in Ireland. At a point. So the point is, like I was telling that, like India, Ireland was also a British colony. At a point. So the people of Ireland were fighting for a dominion status, and Anne Besant was deeply impressed with the home rule movement that was being carried out in Ireland. So the following year, in 1915, Anne Besant returned back to India, and immediately after returning back to India, Anne Besant contacted the Congress leadership and convinced them to launch a home rule movement on the lines of the Irish home rule movement. So basically, in 1915, Anne Besant returned back to India. Immediately, she uh, held negotiations with the leaders of the Congress Party and convinced them and tried to convince them to launch a home rule movement on the lines of the Irish home rule movement. But the point is, the Congress leadership was not very much convinced with the idea. Basically, the response of the Congress party to this proposal of Anne Besant was very, very lukewarm. The reason being was in 1914, World War One had begun and it continued till 1918. So basically, World War One was going on, and therefore the Congress leadership was uh, it the Congress leadership was convinced that it was not the right time to launch a movement against the British. So basically, World War One was going on. So the Congress leadership was not convinced that the time to launch the movement was the right time. Hence, was the response of the Congress leadership was very, very lukewarm to this proposal of an. But the point is, a very prominent leader of the Congress party, that is Bala Gangadhar Tilak, was fully convinced with the proposal of Anne Besant. In fact, Bala Gangadhar Tilak uh, gave his complete support to Anne Besant uh, and her idea. So basically, Bala Gangadhar Tilak fully supported the idea of Anne Besant to launch a home rule movement in India. In general, from the Congress side, in general, from the Congress side, uh, Congress leadership was not convinced about this idea, but Bala Gangadhar Tilak was very much convinced. So the point is, Bala Gangadhar Tilak was just released from prison. He was just released from prison in 1914. So let us spend some time discussing about Bala Gangadhar Tilak. As I told you, was Tilak and Anne Besant who played a very important role. These are the individuals who played a very important role in the home rule movement. So we have discussed about a few details relating to Anne Besant. Let us discuss a few details relating to Bala Gangadhar. So the point is, Tilak was a very prominent leader of the Congress party, and particularly Tilak belonged to the extremist wing of the Congress party. So basically, Congress party was founded in 1885. It was established in 5, and right from the inception, Congress party had several factions. One group of the Congress party came to be came to be referred to as the moderates. One group of the Congress party came to be referred to as the moderates. The other group of the Congress party came to be referred to as the extremists. The extremist point. So the Congress party was established in 1885. Right from its inception, Congress party had several groups. One group is the moderate wing, the other group is the extremist. So, what is the reason for the emergence of these two groups? The point is, the objectives of the moderates, the objectives of the extremists were not one and the same. The objectives of the moderates was to achieve dominion status to India. Dominion status to India. So basically, the objective of the moderates was to achieve dominion status to India, whereas the objective of the extremist was to secure full independence of India. Full independence. So that's the basic difference between both of them. Of course, there are other differences, moderates and extremists. Basically, the objectives of the moderates and the objectives of the extremist was not one and the same. So very important, a very important leader of the extremist wing of the Congress party was Bala Gangadhar Tilak. So I told you that right from the beginning, uh, Tilak differed with the leaders of the moderate wing of the INC, that is Indian National Congress, were the objectives of the Congress party. So right from the beginning, he differed with the leadership of or the leaders of the moderate wing of the INC over the objectives of the Congress party. Which objectives? I just discussed these objectives. So over a period of time, differences between the moderates and the extremists began to increase, and these increase in the these differences of opinion between both of these groups of the Indian National Congress resulted in a split in the Indian National Congress in the year 1907. So basically, because of the growing differences between the two groups, a split occurred in the Indian National Congress in the year 1907 AD. And meanwhile, the Congress party launched a mass movement in India known as the Swadeshi movement. This movement was launched and carried out between 1905 to 1908, mostly. So the point is, the Congress party launched a mass movement in India called Swadeshi movement. It was launched in 1905 and carried till 1908. Mostly, this Swadeshi movement was carried out by the extremists of the Congress party. Extremists of the Congress party. So the extremists of the Congress party played a very important role in Swadeshi movement. So the point is, Of all the extremist leaders, it was Tilak who played a very, very important role in this Swadeshi movement. During the entire Swadeshi movement, Tilak was at the forefront. So therefore, the British arrested Tilak and put him in prison for about 6 years. For example, the point is, for participating in the Swadeshi movement, Tilak was arrested and was sent to prison for about 6 years between 1908 to 1914. That's the point. So basically, Tilak was in prison between 1908 to 1914. So it was only in 1914 that Tilak was released from prison. Tilak was released from prison in 1914. But after his release, Tilak was no more an extremist. After his release from prison in 1914, Tilak was no more an extremist. He more or less began to speak the language of the moderates. More or less, Tilak, after his release from prison, began to speak the language of the moderates. That's the point. So basically, after his release from prison, the demands of Tilak were similar to that of the demands of the moderate. Point. So basically, Tilak started following his release from prison in 1914. Tilak also started demanding dominion status to India. Dominion status are home rule or self rule, one and the same. Home rule, self rule, one and the same. That's the point which I'm conveying. So the point is, the home rule movement of India is one of the important political movements in the early 20th century. It was started in 1916. It was started by two prominent nationalists of India, that is Annie Besant and Bala Gangadhar Tilak. So far, we have discussed a few details relating to Annie Besant. We have also discussed a few details relating to Bala Gangadhar Tilak. But the whole point which I tried conveying is, Tilak belonged to the extremist wing of the Indian National Congress. The extremists wanted to achieve or to secure complete independence for India, but after the arrest of Tilak and imprisonment of Tilak for 6 years, Tilak was almost a changed man. He began speaking the language of the moderates. After his release from prison, he, instead of demanding complete independence to India, started demanding dominion status to India. That's the point. Come to the point. So take a look at uh, uh, an observation made by Tilak in this particular context. Take a look at it. So this basically this statement of Tilak indicates that he was no more an extremist; he was a changed individual. So take a look at this statement of Tilak. I may state once for all that we are trying in India, as the Irish home rulers have been doing in Ireland, for a reform of a system of administration and not for the overthrow of the government. And I have no hesitation in saying that the acts of violence which had been committed in different parts of India are not only repugnant to me, but have, in my opinion, only unfortunately retarded to a great extent the pace of our political progress. The pace of our political progress. So basically, Tilak, after his release from prison, started demanding home rule to India or dominion status to India. That's the point. So that's about a few details relating to Tilak. So the point is, in 1916, in the year 1916, two parallel home rule movements were two parallel home rule movements came into existence. Let me repeat. In the year 1916, two parallel home rule movements were started. One home rule movement was led by Tilak, and the other home rule movement was led by Anne Besant. So basically, in 1916, we see the beginning of two home rule movements, one led by Tilak and the other led by Anne Besant. So Tilak's Home Rule movement was founded in April 1916. The headquarter of Tilak's Home Rule League, basically Tilak's Home Rule League was founded in April 1916. The headquarter of Tilak's Home Rule League was Pune, city of Pune. Okay, point. And Tilak's Home Rule movement was mostly confined to the four regions of India. Tilak's Home Rule movement was confined to the four regions of India, is Bombay province, but excluding the city of Bombay. Bombay province, but excluding the city of Bombay. Then Karnataka province, then Central province. The fourth is Berar. Berar is basically a part of Maharashtra. Point. Now a part of Maharashtra. So in these four regions of India, Tilak's Home Rule movement was carried out. Take a look at the objectives of Tilak's Home Rule movement. The objectives of Tilak's Home Rule. The first objective is to achieve Home Rule. Home Rule. So what we meant, the meaning of Home Rule, I have already explained. So the first objective of Tilak's Home Rule movement is to achieve Home Rule for India. That's the point. The second objective of Tilak's Home Rule movement is the formation of linguistic provinces. So Tilak wanted the provinces of India to be uh, organized on the basis of language. The point is, Tilak wanted the provinces of India to be reorganized on the basis of language. That was his demand. That's the point. So take a look at this observation of Tilak. Form one separate each for Marathi, Telugu, and the Canaries provinces. So basically, the second objective of Tilak's Home Rule movement was to achieve formation of linguistic provinces. The third objective of Tilak's Home Rule movement was to promote education in the vernacular. So Tilak was convinced that education should be promoted in mother tongue, in mother tongue of the people, and education should not be taught in altogether a different language, foreign language. That's the point. So Tilak was convinced that education should be promoted only in the vernacular languages of India. Therefore, he started demanding education in the vernacular. At a point. So, for example, take a look at this observation of Tilak. To the English educate their people through French, the French language. To Germans do it through English, or the Turks through French. So basically, he was of the view that education has to be promoted in one's mother tongue and not in the foreign language. He was fully convinced that if education is taught in one's mother language, mother tongue, then it becomes easier for the students to understand, to learn, or to learn education, to learn the subjects in a very easy manner, to learn different subjects in much better manner. That was the object. That was the view of Bala Gangadhar Tilak. Now come to Anne Besant's Home Rule League. Anne Besant's Home Rule League was founded in September 1916. Tilak's Home Rule League was founded in April 1916. Anne Besant's Home Rule League was founded in September 1916. That's the point. So the headquarter of Anne Besant's Home Rule League was Madras. Was located in Madras. That's the point. So what was the objective? So Anne Besant's Home Rule League had only one objective, that is to achieve Home Rule. So Tilak's Home Rule League had three objectives, but Anne Besant's Home Rule League had only one objective, that is to achieve Home Rule. So let us understand what was the reason, what was the need for having two Home Rule movements. What was the need for having two Home Rule movements? Let me understand, let me explain this point once again. Anne Besant's Home Rule League was founded in September 1916. The headquarter of Anne Besant's Home Rule League was located in Madras. The point is, Anne Besant's Home Rule League had jurisdiction throughout India, including the. So basically, Anne Besant's Home Rule League was active in all parts of India ex- except. So basically, Anne Besant's Home Rule League was active in all parts of India except in the four regions where Tilak's Home Rule movement was being carried out. So in the four regions where Tilak was carrying out his movement, except in those four regions, Anne Besant's Home Rule League was active in all the regions except in the four regions where Tilak's Home Rule League was being carried out. The point clear. So Anne Besant's Home Rule League had only one objective, that is to achieve home rule. So let us understand the need for two home rule movements. Why? What was the need for having two home rule movements? So basically, the reason for the two home rule movements was explained by Anne Besant herself. So basically, Anne Besant was a very important. She was in fact the president of a Theosophical Society right from 1907. Anne Besant was the president of a Theosophical Society right from 1907. So Anne Besant had a large follower base, particularly the members of Theosophical Society were great admirers of Anne Besant. And similarly, Tilak, he needs no introduction. Tilak was a very prominent leader, particularly he was the most prominent Congress leader from Maharashtra. Tilak also had a large follower. Basically, the followers of Tilak and the followers of Anne Besant wanted their respective leaders to lead the Home Rule movement. The followers of Tilak and followers of Anne Besant wanted their respective leaders to lead the Home Rule movement. So the conflict was not between Anne Besant and Tilak, but the conflict was between the followers of both of these. At a point. So to avoid conflict between the followers of both of these individuals, Anne Besant and Tilak decided to start two different home rule movements. And both of them decided to carve out the region of their operation. So basically, the conflict, the disagreements were not between Anne Besant and Tilak. The disagreements were between the followers of both. To avoid disagreements between the followers of both of these leaders, Anne Besant and Tilak decided to start two different home rule movements. Both of them decided to carve out areas of operation. Basically, Tilak's home rule movement was confined to Bombay province, Central province, Karnataka province, and Berar, whereas Anne Besant's home rule movement was carried out in all parts of India, including in the city of Bombay, but excluding those regions where Tilak's home rule movement was being carried out. That's the reason why we came to have two different home rule movements. To take a look at the methods of protest carried out, about the methods of protest or the propaganda carried in the journals. So, for example, New India and Commonweal, these were the two journals founded by these were the two journals founded by Anne Besant, New India and Commonweal. So basically, Anne Besant wrote numerous articles in these journals explaining the need for India getting dominion status. So basically, in these both of these journals, Anne Besant carried an extensive propaganda in favor of India being granted dominion status. And similarly, Kesari and Maratha happen to be the two journals founded by Bala Gangadhar Tilak. So basically, this Kesari happened to be uh, a Marathi journal, Marathi journal, whereas the Maratha happened to be an English journal. So both of them were founded by Tilak. So in both of these journals, Tilak carried out an extensive propaganda in favor of dominion status. That's the point. So in what way did the home rule home in what way did both of these leaders carry out the propaganda? One method was they carried an extensive campaign in favor of home rule in various journals and newspapers. These are the journals: New India, Commonweal, Kesari, Tata. New India and Commonweal, these are basically English. These are journals. Kesari is a Marathi journal. Maratha is an English. Kindly remember this point. Second, pamphlets were published, distributed among the people. This was the second this was the second method in which campaign was carried out. Pamphlets were published and were distributed extensively among the people to enlighten the people the need for India getting dominion status. The point. So Marathi, these pamphlets were published in Marathi. Then lectures were organized. Public lectures were organized to enlighten the people, to encourage the people to come forward and participate in the movement demanding dominion status. Basically, lectures were organized at a point. Debates and discussions were conducted at a point. Then, to present arguments to friends in favor of home rule and at the same time urge them to join the movement. So, basically, people were encouraged to actively present arguments to friends in favor of home rule and urge them to join the home rule movement. Then classes were also organized students. Classes were also organized the students on politics. This was another method in which uh, this was another method in which the propaganda was Besant and home rule, Besant and Bala Gangadhara Tilak. So the point is the home rule movement was carried out in 1916 and 1917. So roughly, this movement was carried out for about an year, but by the end of 1917, home rule movement came to an end. The entire home rule movement came to an end. What are the reasons? Why did this move? One is severe government repression. So the government came down heavy hand on the participants of the home rule movement. The government came down heavy hand on the protesters. In fact, permission to organize meetings and in case if the meetings were organized, meetings began to be disrupted. So the point is, uh, government high-handedness. Knighthood is basically the highest award conferred by the British. So basically, Jinnah was a lawyer by profession. Jinnah fought the case on behalf of Bala Gangadhar Tilak, played an important role in the release of Bala Gangadhar in November 19. So basically, with the arrest of both of these leaders, the movement began to decline. That's the second reason for the decline. Third, communal riots broke out in different parts of the country. Communities, that is the Muslims and Dalits, were worried that granting of home rule to India would mean revival of the privileges of the upper caste Hindu. Point is, both of these communities, Muslims and the Dalits, opposed the home rule movement, as both of them, the members of both of these communities, believed that granting of home rule to India would mean revival of the privileges of the upper caste Hindu. So the point is, home rule means allowing Indians to rule over themselves, particularly in the internal matters. But the point is, the members of both of these communities believed that if in case Indians are allowed to govern over themselves, so basically the members of both of these communities, that is the Muslims and Hindus, believed that the granting of home rule to India would not benefit them at all. Rather, it would lead to the revival of privileges of the upper caste Hindus, which they did not want. So basically, they feared, the members of both of these communities feared the home rule to India would certainly bring back the domination of the upper caste Hindu. Basically, they feared that the home rule would ultimately result in the revival of domination of the upper caste Hindus over both Dalits and Muslims. Therefore, the members of both of these communities stayed back or stayed out of the home rule. Instead, they started opposing the home rule movement. And fifth, and perhaps the important reason, the most important reason for the decline of this movement is a declaration called August Declaration. August Declaration 1970. This declaration was made by none other than the Secretary of State by name Edwin Montego. The Secretary of State is basically a minister in charge of affairs. The Secretary of State back then was one Mr. Edwin Montego. So in 1917, he issued a declaration, became popular as August Declaration 1917. So basically, World War was going on in 19. I already told you, World War began in 1914. So Britain was in great trouble 17 as a result of the ongoing World War One. So the British government was keen to secure support of the Indians in its World War efforts. British government was very keen to secure the support of the Indians in its World War One efforts. So in that particular context, the view to secure the support of the Indian World War One efforts, uh, Edwin Montego made a particular declaration. Is popularly called the August Declaration. So in this declaration, elected government. At my point. So basically, when this was promised by British uh, senior officer, that since the objective of the home rule movement was to achieve home rule, and the same was promised by the British government itself in August 19. Therefore, the movement declined. The movement came